Welcome to the Coding Loft. My name is Samuel. In today's video you will learn how to build a scroll indicator at the top that moves to the right as you scroll down all the way to the bottom, and it shows you exactly where you are on the page. And what's special about today's video is that you will learn two ways to solve this. The first one is the more easy solution using just regular functional programming. And the second one, we will use an object-oriented approach where we write all of this JavaScript into one object that we can call anytime and reuse on pretty much any website. If you're new to the channel and you find this content helpful, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos in the future. Without further ado, let's jump right in. So first, let's talk quickly about the setup of this project. So we do have a nav bar here at the top. And at the bottom of this nav bar is where we want to show this scroll indication bar. It's a gray bar and we want to display a blue bar as we move down that overlays this gray bar. So here's how this project is set up. We do have an index file, a script file, which is empty for now, and a style file. And the images we get from this image folder, so you can check out the GitHub repo to see the code for yourself. And inside of this index file, right here in the header, we have this nav class. And right here at the bottom you can see this grayed out comment. And that's basically where we want to insert our scroll indicator. So let's do that right now. So we have a div with the class of scroll indicator. Of course you can use any other class name that you want, and then we close it. And that's all the HTML that we need for now. And as you can see on the page, we don't see anything yet because we haven't styled our scroll indicator. So inside of our style file, right now here I have a section where I want to display the scroll indicator styles, and we call the scroll indicator class name that we just defined. So first we want a width of 100 viewport width. That means it spans all the way from the left of the screen to the right of the screen. Then for the background, we choose a light gray color, so hashtag EEE. You can choose any color that you want. And as a height, we just go for 10 pixels, so it's not too big on the screen, but we see it definitely. And then we also want to position it absolute to the parent container. And in the parent container, we want to display it at the bottom, so we say 0 pixels right here. And now you can see we do have this light gray bar at the bottom of the nav bar container, which is the parent container. But as we scroll down, nothing happens yet because that's the magic that the JavaScript will do. So let's jump to our script file. So first of all, I want to get a reference to the scroll bar, and I call this scroll indicator equals, and we use document.querySelector, and we gave it the class of scroll-indicator. And then what we want to do is we want to make two things. We want to add a filling. I just call it filling. That's basically the blue overlay that we see later. And then we want to add an event listener to the window. So to get started, let's do the filling first. Well, to do that, we need to create a new element in the document. And to do that, we use document.createElement, and then we create a div element. And then we want to give it a class name too. So we say classlist.add. And we call this scroll indicator __ bar. And now we need to add some styles. So we can say filling.style, and then we want to change the background color to a certain blue. And for this I chose this blue right here. You will see in a second how it looks because it fits the overall theme of the page. We want the filling to have a height that is always 100% of the parent container. So we say 100% right here. And lastly, we have the filling.style.width. So basically how long this is on the screen. So this is the part that we want to activate via JavaScript. But right now, just to see that this works, let's put this to 100 pixels. Still, we don't see anything because now we need to insert this filling element inside of our scroll indicator. And the way that we do that is we say scroll indicator.insert adjacent element. And then we specify where we want to insert it. We just say after begin. And what do we want to insert? Well, we want to insert our filling. And now you can see that we've inserted this div right here, which has a width of 100 pixels. If we would set this to 500 pixels, it would have the corresponding length on the screen. So that's the element that we want to change. And to do that, we add an event listener. So we say window.add event listener, and we want to listen to a scroll event. So every time I scroll down the page, we want to perform a callback function. And that's the second part that we define right here. Before we continue, let's just put this width back to 0 pixels. So we don't have any bar that we see right here. But if you look inside of the HTML, it is still here. We still have the scroll indicator __ bar. but the width is 0 pixels, so that's why you don't see anything. Now inside of the event listener, we want to get 3 different properties. So one is the window height, so we say const window height equals, and then we get it by saying window dot inner height. The second is the page height, and we get that by saying document dot body dot scroll height. And then lastly, we want the actual scroll height, meaning how far we've actually scrolled down from the top of the page. Now let's look at those in turn so you understand better what's going on. So we have the window height, and then we show the window height. We have the page height, and last but not least, we have our scroll height. So if I now go back to the page and just scroll a little, you can see all of these different values being printed to the screen. So the window height is, as you can see, always 467. The page height is 3513, and the scroll height is 22 pixels in this case. So the window height and the page height, they don't really change. Scroll height is the one that changes as we scroll down. And as we scroll up, you can see it goes back to 0, while the window height and page height stay the same. The window height will change once I start to resize the window. So for instance, in this case right now, you can see that now the window height is 593 pixels. So basically from the top of our window right down here to where our window stops. Whereas the page height is the height all the way from the top of the document to the bottom of the document. Now we only need 2 more lines of code and then we're done. So we need to calculate a scroll percentage because we want to know exactly how far we've scrolled down. And that's the scroll height. So basically the pixels that we scrolled from the top divided by the page height times 100. So for instance, if we scrolled 20 pixels and the page has a height of 2000 pixels, then we have scrolled just 1% down. And then to style our bar, we say filling.style.width. So as I said, up here, that's the part that we want to change. And right now we want to use this percentage right here to change it. So we say scroll percentage to fixed because we want to round it. And then we need to add a percentage sign right here. And to also show you that this works, we can console.log the scroll percentage right here. And then you see what's this percentage number. So now as I scroll down, you can see that right here we have just scrolled 0.9, right here 1%. Here we're at 25% of the entire page. And that's the number that we use to color our bar. So with every scroll, it calculates this percentage and it updates the color, the width of our filling. And the reason we've used toFixed3 here is if I add this to our console.log statement and I scroll down, you can now see that we don't have this really long number, but we cut it off after 3 decimal points. And now you might have seen it, we're almost done, but we have one final problem, and that's as we've scrolled to the bottom of the page, we haven't filled our bar entirely. Well, and the reason for that is quite simple, because from the page height, we need to subtract the window height, so the height of what we see right here. And we do that up here when we say, well, our page height is document.body.scroll height, but we want to subtract the window height in order to account for the height of the window. So in that way, we can actually get a scroll percentage that goes from 0 to 100. And now back on the page, as I scroll down, it fills, it fills, it fills. And when we get to the bottom of the page, it has filled all the way to the right. So that's the first way to add a scroll bar to our project. The problem right now, as you can see, is we need to first add something here into the HTML. We need to add the styles into our style sheet, and then we run the JavaScript. So if we would want to reuse this on different pages, it would be a little more complicated. And that's why we'll look at a second solution where we will build a class that we can reuse anywhere we want and where we don't need to add something into the HTML directly or into our style file. So I'll comment all of this out, and now we will look at a solution where we'll use a class to solve the same problem. In order to do this, I will remove this div right here. I will comment out these styles for now. And you can see that the scroll bar has disappeared from our screen. So first we will create a class and we call this scroll indicator. And this will take in some arguments in the constructor. And these arguments that we want to take in are the selector. So basically saying where do we want to insert our scroll indicator. Then we want to specify a position. A color, so we can change the color of our scroll bar if we want to, for instance, display it on a different page. and we want to take in the window object because that's where we will add our event listener. And down here we initiate a new scroll indicator by saying scroll indicator equals new, and then we say scroll indicator, so we initiate a new instance of the scroll indicator class, and then in a second we will pass in the right parameters here. So in this case we want to insert it directly into our nav. So we want to specify a selector that can very easily tell our JavaScript where to insert the HTML later. So in order to do that we say nav.nav, that's the HTML tag and the class that we gave it. We want to use the position before end, and for the color we use the same color that we had before, so that was this blue right here. So we copy that, paste it in here, and then last but not least we pass in the window object. So first we will get all of those properties and we say this.selector equals selector, this.position equals position, this.color equals color, and this.window equals window. Then we also want an element that holds our scroll bar, so that's null at the beginning, and then we want to have an element which holds the filling, so basically the blue bar that goes on top of the scroll bar. And the way that I like to do this is that down here we call a function this.init, which will call several functions after each other. So down here we need to define an init function, and when we call this init function then we want to do certain things. So first of all, just to see that this works, we can console.log init scroll indicator. And now on our page you can see that we console.log this to our screen. So this means that every time we create a new instance of the scroll indicator, which will perform all of the different steps that we define down here. So for this project there are basically 3 different steps. The first is to insert a parent element, which is our scroll bar. Then we want to insert the filling element. And last but not least, we want to add a scroll event listener. So we call this scroll listener. And now of course we need to define all of these 3 methods after each other. So I will copy them up here. Select this and the dot, press Command D and then delete it. Press Command to the right, so you jump to the back of these 3 lines, 1 to the left, space, and then the curly brackets, and now we have these 3 methods that we can define up here. So let's start by adding the parent element. So that means that we insert our scroll indicator bar into the nav bar, and we say this.container, that basically refers to the nav bar, is document.querySelector, and then we use this.selector as the selector that we want to specify. So in our case we use nav.nav, meaning this right here basically refers to our nav bar. And to see that this is the case, we can console.log it, this.container, and then down here you can see that, yes, it's our nav bar. Then we want to create our scroll bar. So we have the scroll bar set to null at the beginning, but now we want to use the document.create element function to create a div. We want to give this a class name, so we say class list.add, and then we give it the same name that we had before, scroll indicator. And now we want to add some styles. So remember how we had the styles in our style file? I commented them out. So we just want to use them again for our element right here. So we'll paste these styles back in, the width, background, height, position, and the bottom. And then I write in all of these lines at the same time. So we press Command and Option, and then the down key. And now we are in each of those lines. And what we now want to do is we want to say this.scrollbar.style. And now we have set all of these different properties, right? Now we want to remove this colon, so we select it, press Command D, hit space and the equal sign, go 1 to the right, and we add the single quotation mark, press Command D to jump to the back of the line, 1 to the left, and again the single quotation mark, and now we have added the styles for our scroll bar. Of course you can type this out line by line, but I find it easy to use those shortcuts to edit multiple lines at the same time. And last but not least, we want to insert it. So right here we say this.container, which is our nav bar, and we want to insert the adjacent element. And then we use the position that we specified on top, so this.position, and we want to add our scroll bar, so this.scroll bar. And now back in our project, you can now see that we've added successfully the gray scroll bar to our nav bar container. How cool is that? Second, we define our method insert filling element. So we take our this.filling property and we set it to document.create element, and then we create a div again, and then we do the same that we did on top. We say this.filling dot style, and now we need to style different things. So first the background, which we set to the color that we gave it. So this is this dot color, right? We added this blue color here in our scroll indicator. Then we copy this down, so you can simply press Shift, Option, and press the down key. And instead of setting the background, we want to set the height, and we set this to 100%. Again, press Shift, Option, and down to copy the line. And now we want to set the width. And just to see that this works, we will set this to, let's say, 50 pixels for now. I also want to give this a class name. We don't need a class name right now, but I always find it better to later navigate the HTML. And if at some point you would need to reuse this element with a different script, it's always handy to have a class name that is kind of unique and that tells you exactly which element you want to work with. So last but not least, inside of our scroll bar, now we want to insert the adjacent element, and we say after begin, and we add our filling element. And something's not right. Well, it seems like I had a typo up here, width, and now we have a width of 50 pixels on the screen. So now we do the same thing with the event listener. So we say this.window.add event listener. And you know how this works, we listen to a scroll event, and then we want to run a callback function every time that we scroll. And I will copy and paste this from up here because we do exactly the same thing. So comment this out. So again, we need our window height, which we get by saying window.innerHeight. We want the page height, which is the document.body scroll height, and we want to subtract the window height so we can get the scroll percentage from 0 to 100%. And last but not least, we get a scroll position by saying const scroll height equals window.scrollY. And then we calculate the scroll position by saying where am I on the screen, which is the current scroll height, relative to the entire height of the page. So page height, and then we multiply this by 100, so we get a percentage number. And last but not least, we then add the width dynamically by saying filling.style.width is whatever scroll percentage is in percent. So right now, filling is not defined, of course, because this has to be this.filling.style.width. And also right here, we want to set this to 0 in the beginning. And when I go back to the project, you see that now everything works. We have the blue scroll indicator bar that moves to the right as we scroll down. And when we reach the bottom of the page, it is all the way to the right, and it moves back to the left as I scroll back up. Now, which method do you prefer, the first one or the second one? Please let me know in the comments. And if you did like this video, if you find the content helpful, then please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching and see you next time.